Welcome everyone to Mailed Fuzz News. I am Peter, that is Tara, and this is your Tuesday edition of the news. I have to do a little bit of mental processing every time I go to say that. Movie and TV news coming up. A couple of juicy movie things actually to start off with, so we'll get into it. And it's almost becoming a running thing here where Tara likes to judge just how important these news items are, so I hope that I impress.
I mean, I definitely did it last time. Because you kept saying that there was a lot of news to do, and then when you said it, it didn't really seem like it was that much of news to me.
See, there it is. Yeah, you don't get to stare at me like I'm talking nonsense when I said that.
Of course I do.
No. Okay, let's start with Attack the Block 2, which there was some mumblings of before, but it's now officially a thing. So, it is now 10 years since the first film came out, because the first one came out in 2011. But John Boyega is back on board. Joe Carnahan, the writer and director, is also back. He's writing and directing the second one. So this is like a proper comeback.
Has he done anything else that I should be aware of? That director?
Joe Carnahan has definitely written stuff. I don't know if he's directed much in the last little while. Talk about put me on the spot here. Right, he wrote and directed The Kid Who Would Be King a couple of years ago.
I like that movie. With little Andy Serkis in it.
And he also helped on the screenplay for Ant-Man. But I think that was when Edgar Wright was doing it with him, because he obviously has worked with Edgar Wright before. So I don't know if he was still heavily involved once Edgar Wright departed that project. So
just a leftover pity screenplay writing acknowledgement. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was always going to be Edgar Wright that was directing it when he was going to direct it, so there would always be just a screenwriting credit. But yeah, it's not a lot in a decade, admittedly. But yeah, I remember liking. I was surprised because I wasn't super into it to begin with when I watched the movie, but then by the end of it, it kind of won me over. So I'm very curious to go back and check it out again, because I haven't seen it. I've only seen it once, so I haven't seen it since the year it came out. So, of course, we're going to do this the first one on the Ace when we get close to this coming out. So I'm curious.
It's kind of like a remake of The Blob in I don't want to say style. What am I thinking? Like troubled youth have to take on responsibility to save their town from this alien invasion. I don't know. It's very like 50s Blob to me.
I suppose, yeah, but you put it into like a inner London council estate setting. Yeah, I suppose it is kind of a slightly different take on that. I mean, it's encouraging, I suppose, that John Boyega is so game to come back to this, because many an actor who, if they were in something like Attack the Block and then got Star Wars, would probably just be launched out of the stratosphere, wouldn't care about coming back to these little films that set them up. But he cared about Pacific Rim 2. He wasn't even in the first one. He just cared about Pacific Rim. He wanted to do one.
Yeah. And
now he really wants to do Attack the Block 2, which
cared enough about that small Star Wars movie to make 2 more.
I think he was contractually obligated on that front. I think you'll find.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of actors who have loyalty to people who gave them their start.
Yeah. I think there's also a lot that don't, which is why it's nice to point it out and say, hey, he's not gotten too big for his boots, is what I'm saying. He respects his earlier roots, Whereas, say, Jack Nicholson, if you try and talk to him about his Roger Corman days before he became a star, I don't imagine he's willing to give Mr. Corman the credit he deserves for giving him his start.
Which one was that?
Which what?
Which Corman movie was he in?
I forget. There's in a couple of them, I think, but he's in the... He put me on the spot. Why did you keep putting me on the spot? I don't remember. I remember watching it.
So you'll stop asking me to do this.
Stop adding fuel to the Save Tara thing that's going on in the comments.
What's next?
Very well, we'll move on. Oh, it's going to be a fun news. That was all the first segment. So That's actually, I just saw this before we came to start the news, and it doesn't come from my usual source, and it's a site that you have to, like, I think, pay for to see like the full articles. But someone has posted the summary of this. Apparently, insiders are saying that Amazon are in talks with MGM to buy them, which is interesting because Amazon, of course, have their own streaming service, and getting the MGM library, which is very big. It's a very deep library.
They've been around a long time.
If I remember correctly, one of the other studios own a portion of the MGM library, but everything before a certain date is like what this would be, like the library that we're talking about here. So this would be.
Is there anything big that MGM owns though that they would want the property for?
Rocky, Pink Panther, James Bond.
All right.
Currently,
I guess those are pretty big ones.
Currently, the Fargo TV show, The Handmaid's Tale. They've got stuff. They've got stuff.
Wait, who's buying them?
Amazon.
Okay. And Handmaid's Tale is not Amazon already?
No.
Okay.
That's on Hulu.
All right, I'm still figuring this stuff out. I don't watch a lot of TV.
No, there was the way you asked for the key detail in the news halfway through
I'm
the
trying
news
to piece
story.
it all together.
So yeah, this would be interesting, just in the sense that Amazon's library, which to be fair tends to be quite deep, although with a lot of trash, would get an influx of a lot of, in the same way, because Disney have their own library of movies. Warner Brothers for HBO Max have a huge library of movies. This would give them a lot of, not Amazon originals, but a lot of movies that they own forever, which means that their library would always have this kind of core to it that would never shrink. And so many of these streaming services now are basically having to do this. Like, at this point, Sony are kind of weird and they've not started their own service, and they've made a deal with Netflix. They're not being bought out by Netflix, but they made a deal with both Netflix and Disney Plus, which is the weird thing about it. Like, Disney get the second window rights. This was on the news a few weeks ago. So Netflix gets Sony things for 18 months, and then it goes to Disney, which is just complex and weird for the sake of it. But
especially since they have so many Marvel properties.
But, Lionsgate, I think, are kind of still out there, just sort of floating around. Like, they don't have a home yet. But, a lot of the other big ones, like Paramount, have their own streaming service now. So Paramount's movies going forward aren't going to be making some big deal for some other streaming service. Like, Universal have got Peacock. So, in theory, Universal movies might just be more and more tied to that as time goes on. So, this would be locking down a big portion of movies that exist to Amazon. And that'd give them their thing. So, yes.
Amazon definitely needs more money. So, yeah, good for them.
Next up, Pet Sematary, which got remade like 2 years ago.
I remember.
Yes. Well, apparently it's happening again. Apparently Stephen King calls it his most scary story ever. I don't know if I agree with that sentiment.
Well, when you say that, because he was on a lot of cocaine at one point.
I don't know when he said it. This could be a new quote, it could be an old quote. I have no idea. But Lindsay Beer is going to direct a follow-up adaptation of the 2019 remake. So I guess they say it's a sequel to the remake. I guess. This is our directorial debut. The original 1989 adaptation made history with Mary Lambert directing the film. And I didn't realize it was the same director that did 1 and 2 of the old ones, but there you go. Plot details are unknown, but the original story, of course, involved a cemetery that would bring not just pets, like any life form, back to life, but they'd come back wrong. They'd come back sort of zombie-esque and evil and angry and whatever. I hated that remake, so I can't say I'm thrilled about the idea of more of it.
Yeah, it was certainly disappointing. Disappointing for a horror fan, disappointing for a John Lithgow fan. disappointing for somebody who really wants Jason Clarke to be great and get that great role again.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that. I'll also add on disappointing for anyone who enjoys a nice location-based forest and not a really obvious soundstage that looks so cheap and obvious in a modern major studio film that I don't understand how it made the screen. I don't
It
understand.
did make it feel like an older Stephen King movie now.
I don't understand why someone didn't go, this looks a bit shit. Why don't we do this somewhere else? But
just rocks and a fog machine. That'll do.
It's just been such a long time since I've seen something like that in a major movie. It was weird. But yeah, okay. So Pet Sematary 2 or whatever they're going to call it. It'll be Pet Sematary. The dead don't die or something. I don't know what they're going to call it. The Pet Cemetery 2 Resurrection.
Okay. I like it. Bug it.
I hate it, but I'm glad you like it. I know it was my idea, but I hate it. I hope that came through in every suggestion I made there. Next up, Natalie, might just be Natalie, but the H may be silent, but it's got the H there. I'm acknowledging the H that exists. Emmanuel and Garrett Hedlund are going to star in The Bride, a Screen Gems horror film directed by Jessica M. Thompson, which in Screen Gems doesn't exactly strike me as an exciting place to be making a horror film. Screen Gems, if I recall, did the first Resident Evil movie, so to hell with them. I could be slightly wrong there, but they definitely make movies like that. They make trash. But Blair Butler wrote the script based on her own pitch. It's inspired by Bram Stoker's Dracula. The film is a contemporary horror thriller that tells the story of a young woman who is courted and swept off her feet, only to realise a gothic conspiracy is afoot. Apparently they're excited about this project because it's Dracula is a popular thing, and I guess that's true.
Yeah, but when do we get our Mel Brooks's Dracula remake? Instead of this Bram Stoker's guy, whatever.
You mean Dracula Dead and Living It? You want more of that?
Yes. It's actually a very bad movie.
Yeah, I hear it's. I mean, I saw it when I was like 9 and I thought it was great, but so I believe everyone that it's bad, but I won't watch it again just so I can have the fun memory.
I mean, there's some funny points for sure.
But yes, so a slight spin on Dracula, with lots of seemingly very young people involved. Yeah, I don't have much to.
Right, young and beautiful vampires.
Yeah, this feels like it's going to be for a young hip audience, which means I'm probably going to hate the shit out of it. So there you go.
Yep.
I'm watching closely because Tara was playing her Nintendo Switch before we started, and I'm just keeping an eye.
Well, now there's a Gus kitty cat on my table here that I'm just entertaining.
That's
with
fine.
Scrooges.
That's fine. But hell, I've recorded many a thing with a cat on my lap. You gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Next up, Netflix and 21 Laps are. Oh, speaking of vampires, they've got a vampire action thriller in the works called Uprising, an adaptation of Raymond Villarreal's book, A People's History of the Vampire Uprising, with Travis Knight directing, Sean Levi and Dan Cohen are producing for 21 Laps. The film is set after a global viral outbreak, because we're all in the mood for that right now, that turns people into vampires and follows CIA agent Lauren Webb, who works against the clock to uncover the truth behind a growing uprising that threatens to wipe out humanity. I mean, it's a Netflix vampire movie. I don't expect gold from this.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Sounds kind of like I Am Legend or something. But, through Netflix. Gross.
Yeah. Well, Netflix movies tend to be quite bland, so I'm getting like shades of maybe I Am Legend. I was getting more Daybreakers, I think, from this description, but I could be wrong. I mean, that was a world where vampires just already existed everywhere, but I don't know. Hey, there you go. Vampire action thriller from Netflix called Uprising. Even the title sounds generic and bland.
I know that could be the next Pet Cemetery.
Yeah, Pet Cemetery 2 Uprising.
Yeah.
It could be. Pet Cemetery 2 The Bride. In fact, every movie we've talked about since Pet Cemetery 2 could be the subtitle for Pet Cemetery 2.
Pet Cemetery 2, The Search for Curly's Gold.
Was Curly a dog? Because then that makes sense in the context of the movie.
Kitty.
I'll just I think I only put this in because I expected you to be here, but the animated show The Great North has been renewed for season 3 at Fox.
Thank goodness.
Yes. I've ever talked about this show before, but it's called The Great North, so I assume it's talking about Canada.
I have no idea what it is.
Nick Offerman's the voice in it.
Cool.
Oh, it's not even Canada, it's Alaska. Oh well, there goes that joke.
Well, I'm American now.
You're not Alaskan though.
No, it's still part of the country. There's a great scene in the movie Snow Dogs, I think it is, with Cuba Gooding Jr. And his mom is played by Nichelle Nichols, and she goes to visit him up in Alaska, and she is asking if they take American money. It's America.
It's
a great scene, great movie.
This is why you're on the show. No one else is bringing up Snow Dogs starring Cuba Gooding Jr. Also, I'm pretty sure Alaska only exists so America can say they have one part of the country that does snow even better than Canada. I'm pretty sure that's the only reason it exists.
America's not threatened by Canada in any way. I'm pretty sure they have Alaska so they can be closer to Russia. Keep an eye on them.
Okay, all right. It was a dumb joke. You have to pick it apart.
I'm glad you acknowledged that it was a dumb joke.
America's not threatened by Canada. And you're Canadian. You shouldn't be jumping to such a thing.
Why would they be threatened by Canada?
Because they're an example of competence.
Okay, guys, kitty.
Unlike your cat.
Yeah, he's pulling stuff out of the desk now.
So next up, this is maybe more of a UK story, but it's a little interesting just in the trend of things going. So the UK used to have FX, the channel, and then it changed to just being called Fox because there's no Fox channel in the UK, so they thought they'd rebrand it, just be calling it Fox. But it's not Fox as in like the UK equivalent of the Fox network in the US. It was still FX programming with some other random imports that didn't have a home in the UK. So it had Walking Dead was on Fox, for example, and all the American Horror Stories and all that sort of stuff go to Fox and whatever. But the news is that the channel, after 17 years of operating under the names of FX and Fox, is now closing. This follows the closure of Disney Channel, Disney XD, and Disney Junior in the last year or so, because they're basically saying we don't care about linear channels anymore, we just want people to buy Disney Plus, and all of the content that was going to go to that channel will now be on Disney Plus in the Star section. So now Walking Dead's going to be on there, American Horror Stories are going to be on there. I mean, it makes Disney Plus more valuable because all of a sudden it has all these extra TV shows that
the wave of the future.
Pretty much, yeah.
We're there.
I thought that was interesting, especially because I didn't know about the kids channels all been taken away. I thought they still existed, but apparently they're gone. And also Disney have already pulled a lot of their channels in Asia as well, so they're just making the switch. Like, no, we don't care about linear channels anymore for most things.
Yeah, and I suspect most other companies will follow. I mean, it took Disney to do it, but they're the ones putting out the major content out for the streaming services. Netflix obviously has been around for a little while, and most people have a Netflix account.
Yeah.
But Disney is pulling out the big guns, and they're the one that, they're cutting the lines, they're cutting the cable lines here. So I think everybody else is going to follow suit.
Yeah, it'll probably be slow, and like some people will be more, stubborn than others, especially if they have a lot of, sports content and stuff like that. There's like maybe a place for live linear channels for that, but
Disney owns ESPN.
which does still exist, to be fair. I mean, they're keeping that going for now. But I mean, at what point did they just have like a streaming channel or as part of an because they have an ESPN streaming service that you can package with Disney Plus. At what point does that just become the only way to get ESPN? Presumably, there's still enough customers through cable that it's still worth existing. But at what point does that become just... Because clearly with this, because this is not a premium channel, Fox in the UK, this is just one of the basic cable channels. Presumably they've looked at that and went, we will make more money switching even just, X number of thousand people to buy Disney Plus accounts than we would from the deals we make with the service providers and the advertising we make on the channel. So...
well, I mean, there's probably already been a huge, significant loss with all the people who are cutting cable altogether.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just makes sense.
No doubt. You can look up ratings for like all the channels in the UK if you want to go digging for them, and some of those cable channels, like we're talking like a few thousand viewers for like a thing. At times it's like that's how low it is because there's so many. There's hundreds of channels and then tons of people don't even have them. So it's it's a very niche thing, but it's like the opposite, because niche usually means that you've got a really passionate fan base who really care about the thing. Cable's the opposite.
These are
of that.
People who are like holding on to something that's dying. Yeah,
but these are people who will just put on channels, and that's just kind of like, oh, I saw it and we'll watch it. It's the opposite of what niche usually means. It's just they're all old people. Well, not all, but
even my folks did it. They did it like they've been holding on to cable for a long time, but they cut it about 6 months ago, switched to YouTube TV, which is technically still like a cable network, because it's not using like any particular, they're not like just using the Disney app or Netflix.
Yeah.
It still shows local television and stuff like that.
Don't get me wrong, if you want to get all the major streaming services, it will add up to about just as expensive, if not more than what a big cable package would have cost you.
Oh, definitely. But luckily we can share.
You can share, but I think the more important thing is that it is truly just you can pick which ones you want. So if you don't care about a couple of them, you can just ignore them, and you don't have to. Yeah, because normally I wouldn't bring this up, but just I saw this during the week as well. Apparently Discovery are in talks to either be bought or merged with AT&T, or so basically the Discovery network and all of their channels and all their content might become like a subsection of HBO Max at that point. Which, again, we're getting a lot of consolidation, which is... It's bad in the sense that it means there's less jobs, and it means that there's less variation, which is bad for creativity. It's bad for the amount of content and the variance of content. From a consumer perspective, though, in terms of like the potential, if you care about Discovery, that's another potential streaming service that might exist someday of just Discovery content. It's probably good that it's been, bundled in to something else potentially. If this goes through, it's not actually happened yet, but they're in talks. So, but it keeps happening. Every so often, we keep talking about these companies merging or buying another one, or because they're all just trying to fill the catalog so their streaming service can be as deep and full of varied shit so that everyone wants it. But hey, there you go. So I thought it was just interesting, less because of the specific channel, but more because of just what it kind of means going forward.
Definitely.
So just two quick TV stories to wrap up. Nothing particularly exciting, so we'll just get them quickly. Showtime has put in development The Education of Matt Barnes, a half-hour scripted comedy series starring and executive produced by Barnes himself, based on the life of the former LA Laker and NBA world champion. I'm glad it said who he was, because I had no idea that he was an athlete. From creator-writer Matt Peiken from Empire, Lionsgate Television, and the Tenenbaum Company. Would that be the Royal Tenenbaum Company?
I think that's a different company.
Yeah, probably, yeah. So it's a look at Barnes' real life after 14 years in the NBA and his journey to the stardom he never achieved on the hardwood. I've never heard that expression before. Like referring to the basketball court as the hardwood.
I don't watch sports.
Yeah, yeah, but I usually hear most of the phrases just through movies, like. We
haven't watched Space Jam 2 yet, so we're not up to date on the basketball lingo.
Because I've heard on the court. That's what I associate with basketball, is on the court.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Some sports it's on the field or on the pitch or on the whatever, but the court. Or the ice, obviously, for ice hockey. But that's a self-explanatory. But yeah. It's a story of how a single dad from Encino balances home business, activism, and relationships while navigating the temptations of the celebrity-centric Instagram and TikTok universe of LA. I don't know if I could hate this more from the premise than I do.
Yeah.
So
it's Encino, not Encino.
I took a stab. It was one or the other. I took a stab.
Yeah.
All right. I don't feel bad about that. I have made more embarrassing mistakes. That one I think is completely understandable.
Yeah. It's just funny.
I don't know this alien land called Encino, okay? This distant faraway galaxy. And then last up, HBO Max have acquired the film and TV rights to Tina Andrews' praised historical novel about Queen Charlotte. It's called Charlotte Sophia, Myth, Madness, and the Moor. I assume they're going to come up with a new title for the for the show. So they're in talks for it, and they're looking at Andrews to serve as creator and showrunner and executive producer, which means a fair bit of control on her own property, which is always nice. So yeah, she did 20 years of major research on Queen Charlotte to write that book. So yeah. Queen Charlotte's also the subject of Bridgerton franchise. There's a prequel limited series been written by Shonda Rhimes that's happening on Netflix. So apparently there's a lot of Queen Charlotte stuff going on right now.
Yep, I guess so.
Yeah.
I've heard of Bridgerton. I've heard it's quite spicy.
Yeah, apparently it's the story of a journey that culminates in a young German princess whom the British did not know was a woman of colour. She becomes queen in an arranged marriage to King George III. I have to admit, I didn't know about this. My history of kings and queens past the ones we have right now is rather limited.
Mine as well.
Yes. It's that the royal family is not something that the Scottish school system gives a shit about.
I really do enjoy period piece films, but I don't tend to go towards like royal family history stuff. I've never been drawn to it.
Yeah.
But I like seeing how the people lived during that time. Sure. During all times.
Yeah, there you go. That's the news. I have nothing else to add. So, there you go.
Yeah, cool.
If you'd like to, I feel like most of these news episodes with you start off in a sort of semi-professional manner and they deteriorate to please end this at the end. And I feel like this was the flip. You started that way, and then you've become more like.
Well, you know why? It's because we're recording something else after this, so I'm not in a rush to go to sleep.
True. That's okay.
Usually we flip flop.
Yeah, that's true.
Record the other thing first and then do the news afterwards. And so it's like, oh my God, wrap it up already so I can go to sleep. Some of us have work in the morning.
I hope everyone enjoys the animosity that Tara's now the staple she brings to the news show is
you're welcome.
The desire to not be on the news show. So thank you very much. You can like and subscribe. Those things help us on YouTube, as does commenting. YouTube will promote us more if you do. So please hit those buttons. Tara, do you want to tell about Patreon? Are you game for that?
Oh, I don't do that on this, no.
Okay. You're just refusing.
This is a favor I'm doing for you.
Okay. Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can support us for as little $1 per month to help keep all the content coming. So go and have a look over there. That is us. So thank you once again for watching and listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV and movies, and send in your suggestions for the Pet Cemetery to subtitle below.